Every summer, a new group of players see their contracts expire, meaning they are free to sign with any team they want. On the open market, depending on how you have produced in the past as well as how good teams may believe that you can become in the future, the monetary value of their new contracts are supposed to represent the player's production and value to the team to a certain degree. That doesn't always work out though, which brings us to the topic of today's video. Today, we'll be going through the 10 players in the league right now with the worst contracts and ranking them in terms of just how bad they are. One parameter that I put in the requirements of the contracts is that there has to be more than 1 year left on the contract. Contracts that are set to expire after this season, no matter how much money they are, aren't necessarily that bad, so every player on this list has a multi-year deal. Before we start though, make sure to subscribe to the channel as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting at the 10th worst contract and working our way up to the worst of the worst, we begin with Dante and his contract of 2 years for $18 million. Obviously, at the start of this list there won't be egregious contracts, which Exum's definitely isn't, but it's still pretty bad given the circumstances. He's been in the NBA for 5 years now, and every year he's struggled with injuries in some capacity, oftentimes holding him out of action for extended periods. Even when he's played, he really hasn't been very good, which undoubtedly is because of the injuries he suffered. It's disappointing because when he got drafted, he had such high potential to be dominant on both ends of the floor, but now the reality is that he's a liability for the Jazz and taking up almost $10 million in a cap hit. Up next, as the 9th worst contract in the NBA at the moment, we have Gorgui Dieng and his contract of 2 years for $33 million. While the Timberwolves often come under a lot of fire for giving Andrew Wiggins a max contract, who, by the way, spoiler alert, does appear later in this video, the Dieng signing was almost just as bad for other reasons. Dieng was a decent big man at the time of the signing, and he put up solid numbers for a role player, I guess, but over the last 2 years, he's fallen almost completely out of the normal rotation because he hasn't been able to adapt his game to the style of play that the team is trying to instill. Plus, the Wolves signed both Jordan Bell and Noah Vonleh this offseason, meaning there will be even more competition in the rotation and less of a chance that he'll get consistent minutes. As a result, the team is now paying $17 million per year to a player that doesn't even contribute to the team, which limits their ability to improve the team moving forward. Next, at number 8 on this list, we have Cristiano Felicio and his contract of 2 years for $16 million. Felicio was given this contract in an offseason when spending from every NBA team was seemingly out of control, but at the time, he really hadn't proven much at all as a player. Since he's been given the contract, he really hasn't improved all that much. Bulls fans have grown incredibly frustrated with him, and to be completely honest, he's been one of the worst big men in the entire league. He's clumsy, he makes a ton of mistakes, and just simply can't perform well at the NBA level. I guess he's a good player to have on a tanking team because he helps you lose games, but the Bulls are trying to take the next step past tanking, and wasting $16 million on Felicio does not help that at all. Next, at number 7, we have Steven Adams and his contract of 2 years for $53 million. Getting paid $27 million per season is very close to a max contract, which means the Thunder probably expected Adams to perform close to a max player. Now, Adams does a lot of things well, including using his terrific strength to box out, grab rebounds, or to clear the way for his guards to grab the rebounds and start fast breaks and initiate the offense quicker. Overall, he is a player that helps teams win games, but he's limited in what he does out on the court, which makes me lean towards labeling him as a role player more so than ever being able to be anything close to a max player. As a result, giving good, not great players this much money tends to limit the team's potential to improve, and as we saw over the last few years with the Thunder, they were only ever first-round exits. Adams being on this list doesn't necessarily mean I think he's bad, just that his contract creates some bad consequences. Next, at number 6, we have Tim Hardaway Jr. and his contract of 2 years for $37 million. While the second year of the deal is a player option and not necessarily guaranteed, there's almost no doubt that he'll choose to take it because the chance of him making $18 million elsewhere is incredibly unlikely. Hardaway Jr. is a decent volume scorer that has shown the ability to heat up and score 20 points on anyone, but in reality, he's more often than not an inefficient shot chucker that doesn't contribute in many other ways. Last season, he shot an abysmal 39% from the floor and a below league average 34% from 3, which simply just won't cut it, especially for someone being paid like a quality role player and reliable scoring option. In order to actually earn the money he's getting, he desperately needs to take and make smarter shots at a much better rate, as well as expand his game overall, because right now what he brings to the table just isn't enough. Next up at number 5 on this list, we have Gordon Hayward and his contract of 2 years for $67 million. The first max contract on the list, Hayward's situation is quite unfortunate and not entirely his fault. When he signed the contract, he was coming off of an all-star season and was looking like one of the best wing players in the league. However, in his first game in a Celtics uniform, he broke his leg and hasn't been the same since. Last season, in his first year back, he struggled mightily at times, wasn't as good of a shooter as he once was, and was usually just a step too slow on both ends of the floor. Despite all of that, he is still getting paid top dollar to play basketball, and is probably one of the biggest reasons the Celtics' once promising future of being championship contenders has come crashing down. He's still only 29 years old, so despite the bad contract, he still has time to continue to attempt to get back to the form he was once in, and ultimately that's the reason why he wasn't higher on this list. Next up at number 4 on this list, we have Nicolas Batum and his contract of 2 years for $53 million. Batum was at one point in his career a high-level role player that shot the ball well from deep, could be used as a secondary playmaker on the wing, and played good defense. Because of that, he was paid like a high-level role player and given close to but not quite max money. The issue, however, is that those days are long gone, and at this point in Batum's career, he's pretty washed up and his best days are very much in the past. The Hornets at the moment are a complete mess because of the fact that they threw so much money at players that didn't deserve it, Batum included, and now will likely be sitting on the bottom of the standings for years. Next up at number 3 on this list, we have John Wall and his contract of 4 years for $171 million. Now, not only is Wall getting paid a max, he's getting paid a super max, which brings on basically the highest expectations possible. For most of his career, he's been one of the best and most productive point guards in the league, so he rightfully got compensated as such. The problem, though, has come over the past few seasons and his outlook into his future. He's struggled with injuries for the last 2 seasons, and in the games that he's been able to play, he hasn't quite been the player he once was. Last year, things got even worse when he re-injured himself, so not only did he miss over half of last season, but he's also reportedly supposed to miss this entire oncoming season. Now, as we saw with Hayward earlier and countless other players that have suffered serious injuries, you usually aren't the same player when you return to the court, which could spell some trouble for Washington. They're locked into Wall for 4 years, one of which he won't even play, and it's basically impossible to predict how good he'll be when he returns. Plus, moving his contract is going to be next to impossible as well because of these circumstances. The possibility of him actually returning to form, given his age and former production, helped him not claim the top spot on this list, but he still makes it into the top 3. Next, as the runner-up for worst contract in the league, we have Andrew Wiggins and his contract of 4 years and $142 million. The story of Wiggins has been covered plenty, so I won't drag on, but basically, he was once heralded as the next best thing, and has yet to ever be anything more than a volume scorer with subpar efficiency and a lack of production in any other part of the game of basketball. He may have good box score numbers, but they tend to be pretty empty and lacking in impact on winning games. Giving a player like him a max contract is one of the biggest mistakes seen in the league in a long time, and will undoubtedly hold the Timberwolves franchise back for years. And finally, at the #1 spot for worst contract in the NBA goes to Chris Paul and his contract of 3 years and $124 million. Paul was another recipient of the Supermax contract, and pretty much immediately it proved to be a big mistake. After he came back from his injury, he was no longer one of the top point guards in the league, as he has previously been throughout his entire career, and showed some serious signs of slowing down. The fact that the Rockets were able to somehow trade him and get a player of Russell Westbrook's caliber back in return for him is pretty unbelievable, but now the Thunder are the ones that will have to deal with his contract for the next 3 years. It's unclear whether or not the Thunder will look to trade him again or not, as they have seemingly committed to a rebuild, but him eating up that much cap space for 3 years drastically limits the capabilities of the team in that time. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who else you think has a bad contract. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.